Ah, it's already started. Very, very, very little enthusiasm, as you can see from me. I think it may be the case of seeing so many pay-per-views over the course of a month in terms of what I have to review. On an average month, I have 2 USW pay-per-views to review, 2 WWE pay-per-views to review. I'm gonna start watching the weekly Ring of Honor shows, and at the same time, there's a chance you may throw in like a New Japan show in there. So, good God Almighty, that's a lot of wrestling to burn me out. And a lot of people would wonder why I don't watch Raw or SmackDown, but when I watch both USW pay-per-views, now that Intensity and Severity are no longer streamable, both WWE pay-per-views show that comes along, any special that comes along, any Ring of Honor that pay-per-view that comes along, any TNA pay-per-view that comes along, that's enough wrestling to burn me out. And on top of that, now that Severity and Intensity are just 2 less things I have to focus on, although Raw and SmackDown, I'm not interested in covering them very much unless it brings in views, which it doesn't, so that's why I don't do it. I'm getting off track. Hello, viewers. My name is Zach Hardy, and this is my review, my thoughts, my ideas, my opinions on the USW Deception 2018. Oopsie daisy. 2017 review. I know a lot of you seem to like the style and the format that I had for my WWE Great Balls of Fire review, I believe it was, and a lot of you like the thumbnail, so I'm glad about that. But I decided that that was going to be a typical thing that I was going to, or a typical style that I was going to use in my reviews from here on out. As you can see, I might want to turn this around so that way it doesn't give away anything on the pad for like future whatever. So as you can see, I am wearing the glasses today because my head is killing me, so I don't have the eyesight very well. And I wanted to blur out the screen with the notepad so that way I didn't focus on the reflection. But aside from that, Deception 2017, much more enjoyable show than I had originally expected. Is the microphone working? Okay. It was a much more enjoyable show than I thought it was going to be. You know, I looked at Intensity's Hellfire pay-per-view from, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and obviously I watched a lot of it there before I went and crashed the party and the main event. But when I went back and I watched the entire show from start to finish, I kind of had much lower expectations for Deception. I know that the Severity roster is a lot better than the Intensity roster. It's a lot more full of stars and or young prospects that can very much well, you know, prosper USW in the future. But I had relatively low expectations going into Deception, primarily because I, of course, didn't know the story. I'm not on the weekly Intensities, so with that, I'm not at the weekly Severity tapings either. And I had no idea the stories that we're going into. I didn't know the match card until I think 2 days before the event, which is typically when I get my updates on what the fuck is happening. And I didn't get much story to any of the feuds and or matches going on unless I've already heard about them before on a previous pay-per-view or in backstage talk, whatever it may be. And when I went into the Deception pay-per-view and I kept thinking to myself, I mean, I don't expect anything worthwhile. I was pleasantly surprised. I'm not going to say blown away, but I was pleasantly surprised with the performances of most, if not all, of the performers from the Severity roster that actually made Deception a very worthwhile pay-per-view watching. And in my opinion, it's probably one of the better B shows that USW B show pay-per-views. Sorry, the camera's bugging me now that I can't see the screen, the fixture. But it was probably one of the better B show pay-per-views that USW is going to put on this year, if not the best B show soul-branded pay-per-view that USW has put on this year already. From start to finish, all 9 matches I enjoyed for the most part. They had their perks. There were a few that failed to really get off the ground. There were some that got off the ground, but not to a high extent. And, I mean, we can go into the matches and discuss all of them within this hour-and-a-half time limit that I guess we have. But overall, I enjoyed the pay-per-view, much like I did with Great Balls of Fire. I kind of have opinions on the show as a whole. As per usual, the show was very well produced. The camera visuals were very well to the eye. Wasn't too many, there wasn't too much kind of shaky cam kind of stuff, unless they came towards the cameraman, in which case they have to back away manually. But aside from that, the card seemed pretty talented, I guess. If they didn't have a story to the match, then they made up for it by putting 2 legitimately good workers in the ring against each other, which I thought kind of helped out for the people that didn't have the slightest clue on what the fuck was happening. And so that I really did enjoy. Pardon me for taking the breaks and fixing this stuff. I liked the show. It was a lot more enjoyable. I think it was probably the best wrestling pay-per-view, at least that I can think of off the top of my head, from this year. WWE, USW, TNA based. The best wrestling B show pay-per-view that USW has put on. One of the better wrestling pay-per-views that any promotion has put on this year. I very much enjoyed most of the matches, and they delivered in their own extent. There was 1 or 2 segments throughout the show. There weren't too many interviews. There weren't many promos. There weren't any real backstage cuts or whatever. The show really focused on the matches and the storytelling that the wrestling matches had to convey on screen. So I enjoyed that approach, and Severity has this approach where they focus more on the wrestling or on the story during their weekly shows and on the pay-per-views when it's supposed to be the culmination into a wrestling match. The match has its own story in it as well, which kind of brings more intrigue, which is why I believe Severity is much better when it comes to the booking stages for a wrestling show. And it kind of gives Severity that credit and that kind of push towards being, a legitimate USW show. So I liked that. The pay-per-view I thought was very enjoyable, and I guess with that we can go on to the matches. Before I do say that, of course, these matches are rated on a scale of 0 to 5, 0 being horrible, 5 being great. Of course, I'll make the exception where I'll make anywhere from 5.25 to 6.50, whatever it may be. I don't know. But the Hardiac meter is still in its infancy. I'm still trying to figure out the perks of how I really want to rate the matches and what I believe a proper rating would be. So right now I'm just basing it off of wrestling performance and the story, or wit or whatever it may be that goes into the match. I'm not counting any story from before the match or any programs they've had on Severity or Intensity weekly shows beforehand. So I'm going into this just based off of wrestling and the match itself. The kickoff match, of course, we have Suzuki Kirikashi representing the Promised Land going up against Paul Orlando, and I think this was probably the weakest match on the card. If I had to pick one as the weakest match, it would probably be this match, for the main reason that it just couldn't get off the ground. I know Paul Orlando and I know Suzuki Kirikashi are both really great workers in the ring, and when you pair them up with the right opponent, they can make a match with a boring storyline going into it seem worthwhile within 5 to 10 minutes of the bell ringing. Both men are great in the ring. I don't want to take credit away from either of them, but this match particularly was probably not going to end up on their career highlight reel. There was no real big spot to save it. It was kind of slow paced, kind of more methodical. I do enjoy that kind of wrestling, especially when it's a form of technical or submission wrestling, and it's also slow and methodical. But this was more. It wasn't sloppy. It was just, it never really got off the ground. The crowd wasn't all too into it. I mean, there were some spots where you could tell they were either rooting for Paul Orlando or they were rooting for Suzuki Kirakashi. Whoever, like the faces, whoever liked the heels. But aside from that, there was no real redeeming factor in this match. It never really got off the ground, per se. And I found that severely disappointing because I thought this was going to be one of the better matches on the card. Kirakashi has had a great run over the past, 3 or 4 months that he's been, in viable contention. And Paul Orlando has been getting this, firm singles push after, parting ways with George Martin. The bookers have found a real way to book him properly, and I like that because he's a great talent. And I think he's got very, very heavy promise going forward in USW. But this match just did not do it for me. I don't know what it is. Neither man was hurt, or injured before the match that I know of. And aside from that, it was just not of tea. It was kind of bland. I'm not gonna say boring because it was a wrestling match. It was a decent wrestling match, but it never got off the ground. It was kind of bland. It wasn't very unique or interesting. There was no real story told within it either. So I would have to say this was probably the most disappointing match on the card in total. And it was at this point that I kind of started going, oh God, well, if this is the kickoff match, the match that's supposed to get the crowd, at least a little bit more excited for the, the rest of the matches going forward, then I can only imagine what the rest of the card was. Of course, from this show or from this match, the matches, got, they got much better paced. And I think the spot that they had on the card, obviously the kickoff match is held with a lot of prestige in USW because, if you're put in the kickoff match, it's obviously an idea that, okay, we're trusting you to be able to get the crowd interested in this pay-per-view. So it's on your shoulders, on the tempo that the crowd goes into the rest of this pay-per-view for. So don't fuck up. And it's a very big thing with USW. I know the opening match and other promotions aren't looked at as very high, but in USW, they like to set a little bit of a different standard in the way that they bring forth an opening match. I guess it's a big prestige for up-and-comers to be trusted with that idea. And it's not that I wouldn't trust either of them going forward. It's just this match just really didn't do it for me. I wasn't a big fan of it. And anyway, I just hope that they can do better if they're going into another match or if they're going into a storyline. I just hope they can do better. Or I believe they will absolutely pick themselves up from this. The bookers seem to really like Kirakashi. They really like Promised Land. They seem to really like Orlando and book him properly. So I see no problem with them. I've said it many times. This match just didn't do it for me. So yeah. 3.25 out of 5. That's why I'm wearing the glasses. So yeah, 3.25 out of 5. We go into the second match. It is Anarchy and Zach Arden. Oh, and Suzuki Kirakashi beat Paul Orlando with, I think it was the guillotine choke or something like that. Yeah, second match, Anarchy and Zach Arden. This match gave me, after the kickoff match kind of lowered my expectations. This match kind of got me back to where I was. I liked the match. It was probably good idea to have these guys follow Kirakashi and Orlando. Whether USW knew that these guys would have a good match or not is, right now. All it is in my mind is just that this match was placed very, this match was very well placed on the card, very well positioned. Zach Arden is probably one of the most promising technical wrestlers that USW has on its roster today. Obviously, you have other great talent, technical wrestlers that will do marvelous things in the future, like Gringo or James or Fernandez or hell, Derek Carter is even a technical wrestler to that extent. Mika Jordan, Verse 9. These guys have great promise going into the future with USW, and I think they'll be around for a while. And Zach Arden is one of those people that fit into that kind of category. I like how they're booking him. They're kind of booking him in like a Sami Zayn underdog type role, but more so to the extent of he's kind of having to prove that he's a valuable asset to the company, less so than he has to prove himself as a worthy contender for a title or a worthy opponent for anybody or whatever it may be. Just checking that my camera's visibly eyed on my face. So this match was very well kept in tempo. Anarchy seemed a lot more energetic than you usually will see him in the ring. He actually pulled off I was about to say sharpshooter. I'm sorry, drop kick for the first time in 8 or 9 months, maybe. It's been a while since he pulled out that drop kick, and it's a thing of beauty. I would say it's on par with Randy Orton's drop kick. It's just a great drop kick, and the crowd pops whenever they see that. So this got a pretty big pop for it. But aside from that, Anarchy performed very well. Arden, I think, carried the match more so. He also kind of steered the match in his direction. When he wanted it to be more up-tempo, more upbeat, he would direct the match into a more quick-based style. And when you had Anarchy wanting to do the same, he would go along with it. Whenever Arden wanted to have it as a slow, more methodical, keeping the pace, keeping the tempo type of style to the match, then that's what Zach Arden would do. So I think that kind of shows more so that he's beginning to gel within the company, within the promotion, and really starting to get a feel for how things work in USW. I think this match was very well paced. Zach Arden defeated Anarchy with, you'll have to forgive me, I watched this Sunday afternoon and it's Thursday evening. A clothesline into the corner, I believe, backstabber, if I'm not mistaken. But Arden wins via pinfall. This match was a very good way to get the crowd back into things. I don't know whether I would have given it any lower of a score had it not been placed in this position, but I would give it 3.75 out of 5 in total. Helped keep the pace of the pay-per-view going forward and more intrigue and interest in the pay-per-view from those who are watching it that had their hopes let down like me from the kickoff match. So that would be how I would position that on the card. And that would be the rating I think is just for the match that they put on. After that, we have a segment with the Promised Land, Blaine North and Tanner Wallace running into Eli Kaner in the hallway. And it was at this point, like, you saw North and Wallace walking throughout the hallway, and the camera was kind of following them or whatever. And then you saw Eli Kaner pop in frame, and that's when the crowd kind of popped. It was a surprising pop because, even though they know that Wallace and Kaner were once the tag team of Tanner and Surf and Tanner, the Surfers or something like that. Yeah, the Surfers, something like that, whatever. Eli Kaner, obviously formerly Surf, Tanner Wallace, formerly just Tanner. So this got, a pretty decent pop from the Pennsylvania crowd. You saw North kind of step back. It was kind of a humorous type, North and Wallace are standing side by side, and Kaner's in front of them. Wallace just looks at him and moves back a little bit, which I found was kind of humorous. And Wallace and Kaner just kind of look at each other and nod. And Kaner walks past them. It was a simple ode to the former tag team. They're obviously booking Eli Kaner as a credible mid-carder. He's probably going to be eyeing a run at maybe the International Championship or something like that coming soon. And at the same time, the Promised Land seems to be doing very well with Wallace, North, and Kirikashi. So I'm sure they're not planning on having a reunion of the Surfers anytime soon. But it was kind of like a nice homage in that they were openly referencing or referring to their former gimmicks. And I thought that was humorous, and I thought it was kind of cool to see USW with the balls to kind of hinder to that little break that kayfabe kind of wall that has been established for years. I found that humorous. So it added a nice little ode into the pay-per-view. So that's why I liked it. We go into a third match, which is for the Global Championship. It is Crimson Red defending the Global Championship against Western Light. This match, it wasn't as slow-paced as Kirikashi versus Orlando, but it was slow-paced. It was methodical. On the other hand, I can't give it a low rating because there was story being told. Crimson Red was working on Western Light's leg, and Western Light was kind of having to battle through the pain. So that was the it was the typical kind of, I'm going to work this part of the limb, you're going to try to fight through pain, that kind of story to the match. So that kind of adds a little bit more credibility towards the performance. This wasn't the kind of methodical pace that would bore you. It was more of an interesting way of proving, and they've been doing this for a little bit, but they've been kind of slowly building Crimson Red as this, extremely talented, work to my style kind of technical wrestler that deserves to be the global champion. And I very heavily like the direction that Crimson Red is going in. Aside from that, the match kind of got off the ground a little too late in the match. The first 10, 12 minutes was that methodical style with Crimson Red working at the knee, with the chop block to the knee, a knee drag. He locked in an ankle lock at one point. He wrapped his leg around the outside post, which is a common, thing for either heels or faces to do in USW. It's kind of looked at as a way of just working the opponent's limbs. Wrapped it around the corner post a bit. He worked on the knee for like the first 10 to 12 minutes. And Western Light had his own kind of style. He was working at the gut, and once he saw that Crimson Red was damaged in the abdomen a little bit, he would go towards another limb. Then he would work his way towards another limb, trying to find a kind of stretch across the entire, spoke of, I guess, however you want to phrase it. And then it started getting off the ground after that 12-minute mark, after that 13-minute mark. It only went for about 17, 18 minutes. They started working a more consistent pace. I liked that Western Light was Irish whipped from one side of the rope to the other, and he kind of had to limp in a jog type way towards the rope, and once bouncing off the rope, when you have to plant your foot to kind of give yourself some momentum going off, he kind of fell down or kind of stumbled a little bit, not fell down, but stumbled a little bit into Crimson Red, who waited with a kick to the gut and a DDT. And the match got a little bit more, quicker paced from there on, but it was a little too, it was a bit too little too late. Crimson Red ended up winning with the Crimson Flop, or whatever he calls it, to retain the Global Championship over Western Light. It wasn't a bad match. It was a step down from Arden and Anarchy, but it was still a decent match to watch. I wasn't bored. I may not have been energized or energetic before the match, but I thought the pacing was very well kept throughout the entire match from start to finish, and it only excelled when it really needed to. Although some would argue that it probably should have started maybe 2 to 3 minutes earlier. But have it as you may, 3.5. I think that's a fair rating for the match. You may disagree, but that's my look on the match. Fourth match on the card was Eli Kaner versus Lone Wolf. This match I liked. I'm a fan of clean, not dignified, but clean kind of earned wins. When you earn a definitive win, clean, you didn't need help, nothing went wrong, you didn't capitalize on some lucky opportunity. I like when that kind of happens. When it doesn't, and it really should, that kind of ruins it a little bit for me. And that's what I think made the rating on this match suffer. I thought all 15 minutes of the match, which is a typical USW match running time, I thought all 15 minutes, thought that not the high tempo, but the constant of Eli Kaner kind of battling Lone Wolf in this own rugged mat style type of match. I liked it. I loved the pace. I really wish, though, the one negative I saw with this match, I really wish that Eli Kaner, even though he did win, Eli Kaner won, obviously, I wish he had won it clean. The ending of the match, I think, was a little, not sloppy, but I think it was a little underwhelming. You had Lone Wolf at the top. Eli Kaner tried for a superplex twice, got knocked off of the top rope twice, and then Eli Kaner went back to the top rope and went for a third attempt at a superplex. Lone Wolf tossed him off, got ready to jump, but when Eli Kaner went up to the top rope, he kind of tried to, I guess, advance himself up a little bit quicker by using the top rope, which in turn forced Lone Wolf to drop as if, the groin area was severely hurt from the whatever. Kayfabe-wise, I'm sure kayfabe-wise it would actually count. But in this case, Eli Kaner then hit the superplex. And when he hit the superplex, Lone Wolf kind of turned a little to the side. Eli Kaner went into the pin. The referee counted 1 and then 2. He wasn't in proper position. Lone Wolf got his hand underneath the rope, underneath the bottom rope. Ref still called the 3. Eli Kaner won via technicality, which even though gives Eli Kaner another win to boast about, especially over a guy like Lone Wolf, I really wish he had won clean with that superplex or whatever you may have. I just think that this whole thing of, even though, within the confines of legitimate wrestling, even if, the referee doesn't see it, that is, put blame on the referee, but it doesn't entitle you to a rematch to get what you rightfully deserve. That in USW, you kind of have to earn that unless you're guaranteed it in some way. I wish that Eli Kaner had won this match, completely clean without any sort of, ref disturbance or whatever, or false finish, however you may have it. Because I think that would have boosted his stock up a little bit higher than it seemed at the end of this match. I would have given it an easy 3.75, but with the ending, it kind of took it away. I was much more intrigued in this match going into this match and throughout the match, with that being continued, than the other 3 matches beforehand. So when I saw that kind of ending, I was like, well, you know what, that kind of sucks. And I realized at that point, the match was kind of a little bit ruined for me, a little tainted, at least rating wise. So I will give this match 3.5. I think it deserves a 3.75, but I can't give that. Or I can't give a 3.75 as the rating, as my rating, and put my name to it when I don't think it was worth 3.75 based off of some part of the match. So that's my reasoning for that. Next match is for the USW World Tag Team Championships, or just the World Tag Team Championships. It is the Promised Land going 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 against the Mabashi. You would expect it to be Drew Akron and Chris Sanders, but from what I heard, Drew Akron had I don't know if it was a medical situation or a family emergency or whatever, but he could not make it to the show. And Chris Sanders obviously can't perform with another member of the Mabashi, otherwise something would look up storyline-wise. So I believe Chris Ross teamed up with Otis Crane to tag against Blaine North and Tanner Wallace, the tag team champions. And this match I thoroughly enjoyed from time in to time out. The Promised Land seemed to be one of, if not the most underrated tag teams that USW's seen in a long while. They can go in the ring, they can make it an intriguing match from start to finish. They won't lose your interest at any point during the match, and whether they win or lose, they still look like valuable assets to the promotion and to the roster and to the picture of the tag team championships opportunity or the tag team picture, whatever it may be. And I think that gives the Promised Land a heavy amount of credibility. On the other hand, I didn't expect too much from this match after Chris Ross and Otis Crane went into the match as a unit. I didn't expect the team to really pan out. I didn't think they would have enough chemistry to be able to hold up a match. And to an extent, you can argue that they didn't. Otis Crane did perform a heavy chunk of that match, and all at the same time, Chris Ross was in it or was put into the match for those legitimate spots or whatever, and to kind of boost the credibility of the match, especially since it's like in the middle of the card. But I was heavily intrigued from this match. You know, the Promised Land showed off to be much more of a cocky prick type unit. You had the clever spot of Blaine North having Otis Crane in a headlock, and then Otis Crane gets up, and Blaine North kicks his leg out from underneath him and brings him back down to the mat, and he said, "No, bitch, you're not getting up." And then he smiled or whatever. Those kind of things, those kind of spots that they do, I find that very intriguing and very humorous. I laugh from time to time at those little spots because it's very funny to see this heel team kind of be like jerks or like very like prickish type jerks. It's very humorous. The match was great. I think Chris Ross ended up taking the pin from Tanner Wallace, which I was fine with. The match was great. They went on for about 20 minutes, which I thought was a decent amount of time. From start to finish, my interest was put into the match. There wasn't any story really. There was no limb work on it. I didn't know the story going into the match. I was told by one that they had started working between Akron and Sanders, and once they realized that Akron couldn't be in the match, they started working it as the Promised Land was kind of cutting on the Mabashi instead of just Akron and Sanders. So that kind of justified that or whatever. But I don't know enough of the story to be able to say, yeah, this is great. You know, this was a great cap off to the story, whatever. Terrible accent there. I think for the most part, the wrestling was solid from start to finish. The selling was great. There was no story with any working on the limbs or any kind of dissension between the ranks of either team or any sort of big maneuver that could really captivate my attention for the rest of the match. If there was, I would have given it like a 4.25, but I stick with a 4 there. I think if these guys were to have one more match, bust out a big spot or something like that, have Chris Ross clothesline both performers over the top rope, and then have Otis Crane, I don't know, leap off of Chris Ross's back into a dive or something like that over the top. I don't know, something like that. I think that would boast it up another 4th, but for the most part, I think it was just a solid match. Obviously, the best tag team match of the night because it was the only tag team match of the night. But for what it was worth, it was a very interesting match from start to finish. Excited to be able to learn that Akron is okay and he'll be back in the shows, the tapings, whatever, as soon as they start taping or whatever, which I believe was this past week. So, yeah, 4 out of 5, I think. Yeah. 6th match on the card was probably it was. I don't think it was the best match of the night. I think it was the second best match of the night, but probably the most surprising match of the night. It was Seth versus Hernasli. And, of course, you see the name Seth, you see the name Hernasli, you think, oh, they're going up against each other? This is good. It's kind of like if you saw AJ Styles go up against Austin Aries for the United States Championship. It's on that level with those kind of workers. Or, if you want to talk in, like, let's say, New Japan terms, I don't know. Maybe the work ethic of Tetsuya Naito. Maybe a cross between two guys with the work ethic of Tetsuya Naito and character, kind of wise, of Tetsuya Naito and Michael Elgin. And the kind of performance like the wise of Michael Elgin. I think that would be a nice way of phrasing it. But the match was really good. It was solid from start to finish. I think it suffered from time constraint. It was at this point, I think they probably said, all right, we probably wanted you to go for about 15, 18 minutes, but maybe cut down to about 13, 14 minutes. I still think it delivered for the time that it got. A little bit more. I hope this starts to turn into some sort of feud. But aside from that, it was a really good match from start to finish. Hernasli performed very well. I think the spot of the match was probably Seth jumping up to the top rope and then doing a kind of like not a crossbody, but a kind of like a leap of faith type lariat maneuver. More like a standing up type of drop. Face first. I don't know. Kind of the spot of the match. Aside from that, I think the match delivered for the most part. I thought it was interesting to be able to see the work ethic of both men be put up against each other. I thought they delivered for what it was worth, and I think this is a solid 4.25. Hernasli beat Seth with the case. 1, 2, 3. Hernasli looked strong. Seth throughout the match was performing very well. He looked like a decent kind of character strength. I liked the match, and yeah, that's about what I can say on it. I know I talked about how it was probably the most underrated match of the night, or underrated match of the night going into it, and I don't have much to talk about it, but I mean, it was a good match. If you really want to, I think it's one of those matches that you should watch yourself and then grasp your own opinion on it. In my opinion, it was very well paced, and the story, while not non-existent, but at the same time not too prominent, was kind of there. It was Hernastley and Seth battling to see, who was the better man in the ring. It wasn't like that was the obvious one, but I think the story was kind of there, and you could kind of grasp it a little bit. So 4.25, Hernastley beats Seth with a case. I enjoyed the match. Next match is for the International Championship. Capital defends the title against Austin Atomic. This was the match that I thought would be the second best match of the night. It became number 3. Just barely beating the Promised Land and Mabashi, but barely losing out to Hernastley and Seth. This match I thought delivered very well. Ever since Austin Atomic had that 5-star match against Majah at Call to Greatness 12, I think it really solidified him as a legitimate main eventer. And I think even though he's taken the step down into the second highest rated belt, I think eventually he'll make his way up and he'll perform to a higher standard than he did before. Obviously, I think he's going to be in the World Championship picture somewhat soon enough. I think he's got big things headed for him. And this match I enjoyed very heavily. It teased a lot with Capital trying to hit the Capital punishment and Austin Atomic doing whatever he can to avoid it. There was one point where Capital threw or Irish whipped him into the ropes. And as he was heading towards the Motiontron way, he looked up as he leaned into the ropes, noticed that he was setting up for a Capital punishment. And as Capital went for it, he knee slid his way out through the bottom rope and was like, no, 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 no. And then took a breather outside of the ring for about, a count of 2 or 3. So I thought that kind of storytelling was funny. Not funny, but intriguing, to say the least. It brought an element of, ooh, can he hit it? And it got to a point where I was kind of doubting that he would hit it, even though I knew Capital would retain, as he did. But, for the most part, the story was there. I noticed it. I was very quick to notice it because he attempted it right out of the gate, and Anarchy ducked back and went into the corner and was like, oh, nope, 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 nope. And it was kind of like what he would do every single time Capital would miss. He'd be like, gonna take a break, gonna take a breather, reevaluate things, then we'll go back into it on my time. That's the way you would go about it. Your opponent keeps trying to put you down, take a breather, kind of get into his head, but at the same time, allow yourself to recuperate, allow yourself to set up. That was there. I liked it. Capital retains with the eventual Capital punishment, and I give the match 4 stars. That is my take on Capital and Austin Atomic. I thought it was a great match. I think it delivered very heavily. So yeah. 8th match on the card, second to last, of course, Verse 9 versus Prophecy. This match I don't think compared on the work ethic that Capital and Austin Atomic had, but at the same time, I think it helped that there was story behind it. Prophecy is this just kind of like degenerate heel. And Verse 9 is this like former fan favorite who's just coming back and is getting the crowd back behind him again. It's kind of like his redemption type thing. So I liked this match for the most part. I think it would have been, again, a 4 out of 5 stars. But just like in Kaner versus Lone Wolf, the ending ruined that rating for me. I can't give it a decent or the rating that I think the work ethic or the match ethic or match pace, whatever, was worth, because the ending had Prophecy utilize a low blow against Verse 9 while the referee was not looking, and then lock in a limb lock and win via submission, giving Prophecy the victory over Verse 9. I would have given it 4 out of 5 stars. I have to give it 3.75. I think when you have that kind of match ruined by that kind of ending, it takes away to an extent, and I think the rating on those matches kind of proved that to be true. So, not that I didn't enjoy the match. I thought it was very fun to see Prophecy work that heel pace that he's actually surprisingly very good at, and I liked seeing Verse 9 back in the ring, because I've only seen him back in the ring like maybe once by now. So, yeah. I thought it was a decent match. Rating was ruined by the ending. Not too much, but it didn't help by any means. So that was my thought on that. World Heavyweight Championship match, main event time. Majah defends the World Heavyweight Championship against Mika Jordan. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is Mika Jordan's first World Heavyweight Championship pay-per-view opportunity. I think it's his first main event opportunity for a world title or on any pay-per-view for that matter. And this match clearly earns match of the night. Majah, for the past number of months, has been on fucking point with his performance. He's been pulling out great matches here and there. Every pay-per-view that he's been on since Call of Greatness has at least been noteworthy and watchable and enjoyable, and I like that. And did I review the last USW pay-per-view? I have all these ideas, but then I always erase them and I go back to it. I did not get to review Velocity. That sucks. It was a good match. Well, it was a good show, too. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. I thought that even though you expected it to be good, Majah is probably one of the best workers in the business today. And when you knew he was going up against a guy like Mika Jordan, it's a no contest. It's a no-brainer. You know this is going to be the match of the night. And if it isn't, then that's disappointing in and of itself. Not, the match would be disappointing, but it's a match you would expect to be like the match of the night or match of the year quality. So the match started out with Majah and Mika Jordan standing across the ring from each other and looking at each other dead center for about a minute and a half. And the crowd was practically rioting the names of both performers. Like, they are strongly getting behind Mika Jordan. They are extremely behind Majah already from years past. And this is a big fight feel. It's going to be a good match. This crowd that they have all the time is just a very wrestling-loving crowd. And then they start slowly taking that circle around the ring. Then they lock up. And once they lock up, the crowd goes ballistic. And the crowd, I'm glad that this match was the main event, because if any match followed it, there was no topping the crowd's enthusiasm in the match. There was no topping the performance, unless you were Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada. But aside from that, Majah and Mika Jordan had a stellar match. Majah wins with the Decapitator, retains the World Heavyweight Championship as you'd expect him to, and Mika Jordan looks strong. He puts on a great performance in his first World Championship main event opportunity. Majah looks strong, proves himself as a worthy world champion, even though he did that the night he won the title. And 4.5 out of 5 stars. My favorite match of the night. I really enjoyed watching it. And I really enjoyed the show, for the most part, from start to finish. So yeah, all 9 matches, at least 3.25 stars and up. You had 4 matches over 4 stars. When I give the show a rating out of 5 stars, on a typical night, if things went right, I would have been like, yeah, it's like a 4.5, even possibly a 4.75 out of 5 star kind of show. But when you had Kirikashi and Orlando, as well as I think it was Crimson Red and Western Light, I believe was the match. No. I think it was Kaner and Lone Wolf. Whatever it may be. You had some matches that just didn't perform to par. And at the same time, when you have 2 really shitty, dirty finishes, not a clean finish, especially in important matches, that devalues the rating at the end. A lot of people took a prediction that I would rate it at 4.5 stars. Some people speculated 4.75, and some people speculated 4. Not many people expected it to be any less than a 4. They saw the pay-per-view. They saw the pay-per-view as a very, very heavy favorite B show pay-per-view from the year. But for the most part, a lot of people that know me were on target with a prediction with the 4.25. I gave it 4.25 out of 5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed the show from start to finish, at least for the majority part. I mean, I think if Kirikashi and Orlando had gone on midway to the show, you know, that may have been helpful, more helpful than not. But at the same time, it may not have been. But aside from that, 4.25 out of 5 stars in total. Was it worth, I think it was the $20 to rent? I would say yes, wrestling-wise, very heavily. $20 worth of your money. I think if you can get a B show pay-per-view, not cared about too much, especially if it's a Soul-branded pay-per-view, with as much talent and as great wrestling as this, that you can find for 4.25 stars or higher, that is worth the money. At least worth $20. I think this pay-per-view was maybe even worth $40. Was the pay-per-view worth $5 to own? I would say yeah. If you want a good wrestling type pay-per-view that focuses more on the emphasis of the wrestling and of the storytelling of the wrestling, you wanted more of a New Japan type feel to a big event than a WWE or TNA / Impact Wrestling / GFW / Jarrett Fuck Penn type promotion type wrestling pay-per-view, then I think you would like this pay-per-view more so if you like the hardcore wrestling type thing. So yeah, I would say it's worth the $20 to rent and the $5 to own. And aside from that, Deception, probably my favorite B show pay-per-view that USW B show pay-per-view that USW has put on this year. And from that, I leave you with my closing words as I remove the pad from the screen. Don't get too entranced by the screen. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, comment. All makes much more of a difference on this channel. And if you want to hear me say it in closing form, remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. And with that being said, I'm Zach Hardy. Thank you for watching, and I'm Zach.